Hello everyone, welcome back to YK Reviews. For today's video, this is going to be all about Saw 5, so let's get into it here. So we are reviewing all the Saw movies in the lead up to Saw 10 coming out later on this month. So we've done Saw 1 to 4. I'll put a playlist up here so you can go check those out when you get the chance. And with this one, it's all about Saw 5. So if you are new to the channel, do the YouTube thing, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future videos here. We do movie reviews, weekly entertainment news episodes, along with like tier ranking videos, because there is going to be a Saw tier ranking later on this month. So definitely consider subscribing so that you're not missing out on that. And this is going to be all spoiler reviews. So if you haven't seen the movie, definitely go check out the movie and then come back so that you're not missing out on anything in terms of details here. Because I'll be completely honest, when it comes to Saw 5, my least favorite movie so far in the franchise is just very bland, and I have like a lot of issues when it comes to like the pacing of the movie and like this cat and mouse game that's being played. But we'll start off with the opening sequence here. So the opening sequence and the opening kill is this character named Seth. He's on this little bed with his arms being trapped here. We come to find out that this person was supposed to get a life sentence for a murder, but he ended up getting a lighter sentence, only spending 5 years in prison. And so in order for him to survive, he has to actually crush his hands, the thing that he used to kill somebody. Otherwise, there's this giant saw machete thing coming down to like chop him off. So he ends up actually doing what he was supposed to do. He crushed his hands, but the machete was still there and still ended up cutting up his body and ended up killing him. And we actually come to find out later on that this person, this Seth person, actually murdered Hoffman's sister, ended up getting a lighter sentence and got his punishment by Jigsaw, which we all know as Hoffman now. He ends up punishing this person in the Jigsaw method, ends up crushing his hands and ends up getting chopped in half. But that is the opening sequence of the movie. And so then we go back to the events of Saw 3, 4, I guess you can call it, that's timeline, with Agent Strom. So he's trapped in that room with the ending of Saw 3. He finds a tape recorder telling him not to continue. He ends up finding a trap door. He goes through the trap door, ends up getting drugged, and finds himself in a chair with his head in a jar with water being filled up. So in order for him to escape, what he does is he puts a pen in his throat, which honestly, I really don't understand that method. If you know in the comments, let me know in the comment section down below what that actually does. Like, how are you able to breathe when you have like a hole in your throat? Because I am actually very curious about that. But he ends up shoving a pen in his throat, ending up able to breathe and survives the trap itself. So he manages to escape. So then you've got all the police and everybody outside this location of where Hoffman was with Eric Matthews and Rick. You see Hoffman walking away with the little girl. I'm assuming is going to be Jeff's daughter. But he ends up escaping, and he actually comes to find out that Strom did manage to escape, but nobody suspects Hoffman just yet. But after all these events take place, Hoffman's actually getting a Medal of Honor because of his bravery, his tenacity of saving a little girl and surviving Jigsaw. Okay, now when it comes to, first of all, we'll talk about again, because you've got like this Saw game being played and then you've got the backstory of like what's going on with our main characters. So we'll start off with the Saw games, which I honestly felt like I was watching Escape Room rather than like a Saw trap, because you've got these 5 people in this room where they're all trapped with like this dog collar, I guess you can call it, whatever you want to call it, around their necks. And apparently they're all being punished for being selfish and by just being having like an advantage. I guess I can't remember the exact words Jigsaw used, but they're very like privileged essentially. And so they have to go through each room trying to work together and not use their mindset of being selfish to try and escape, which honestly, I don't know if just because of the way how the movie played out, but the first test is that each of them have like a glass box with the key inside. You have to move forward using the chain, but the more you move forward, the other people's chains are going to pull you back. And by doing that, by the end of the timer, there's going to be like a saw that will cut your head in half. So obviously, animal instinct, human nature, everybody's fighting for survival, ends up going to try and get the key. 4 of them managed to get the key. The girl, the firefighter, I believe she's not able to do it, so her head gets chopped in half. And then they move on to the second room where you've got like the glass above the room with like these little special keys that have like shapes on it. Each shape opens up a gate that leads to a tunnel. Again, everybody's fighting with one another because you've got like these 4 characters. So you've got like one that's a journalist who knows everything about all the other characters. You've got this guy in a suit. I honestly can't remember any of their names, but his backstory is that he killed a bunch of people in a building. You've got this white lady who I believe is like an estate agent or something like that, and then you've got the black lady, which I really can't remember what her occupation was, to be completely honest with you, because I watch these movies back to back, so all these movies just kind of like blended together for me. So I genuinely can't remember her occupation. But the newspaper guy, the writer, ends up smashing the wooden stick on the guy in the suit because it's like every man for himself. He ends up smashing all the jars. The two ladies manage to get the key and put themselves in the tunnel, not before the black lady hits the journalist guy and ends up saving the guy in the suit. But I mean, whether you're fighting for survival or not, those tunnels were big enough to fit 2 people each. So I know that you're fighting for survival. I know you're in a room there, but wouldn't you just think logically, like, oh, hey, this tunnel is big enough for 2 people. Why don't you come with me? I don't understand some of the decision making, but essentially the 2 ladies and the guy in the suit ends up going into the tunnel. The journalist guy doesn't make it in time because that room gets blown up and he ends up dying. And then those 3 move on to like the 3rd room, where in the 3rd room you've got this tub where you have to have these connectors, these electrical connectors into the tub in order for them to have enough electricity to open the door. Now obviously everybody's like fighting who's going to get in the tub, because if you get in the tub you're basically dying, you're basically getting killed. Now the black lady's telling the guy in the suit to get into the tub. The white girl ends up stabbing the black lady and she's putting her in the tub, and then they just end up hooking all these connectors to the girl in the tub. The electricity opens up and she ends up, essentially she's dead, she gets killed off, and then you have the white lady and the guy in the suit ended up going into another room with the final test being placed is that you have to sacrifice blood in order for you to be able to open up the next room. So because we come to find out that in the first room all the keys were the same, so they could have worked together, one person could have got the key, ended up unlocking all their heads, surviving all of them. Second room, again, like I mentioned, the tunnels, 2 people could have fit, so they could have all worked together to get the tunnels. That way in the 3rd room with the electricity thing, everybody would have been able to hold a connector, getting a little shock, to then end up going into the final room, because everybody, 5 people, a little bit of blood would have been sufficed. But because they couldn't work together, because they're all selfish and that kind of stuff, those 2 people end up having like their arms, literally their sword in half. So it came up to like here, I believe it was, where they showed it. So like he literally had all of this just chopped in half for the amount of blood that had to be sacrificed, and so they both end up surviving. But again, like I mentioned, all of this whole test really did feel like I was watching Escape Room, like that Escape Room movie. That's what it kind of felt like. So while it was enjoyable, just felt like it was really like out of place when it comes to what's taking place with the Saw movie, because again, you have this whole cat and mouse chase being done with Strom and with Hoffman, because after the whole events of the first act, when it comes to like Hoffman being honored and that kind of stuff, Strom is being in the hospital. He actually confronts Hoffman about how he's able to escape everything, not a scratch on him, that kind of stuff. This new character, this FBI character, Erickson, I believe his name was, tells Strom that he's kicked off the case, he needs to get some rest. So throughout the movie then, you've got this like cat and mouse chase sequence where Strom is putting the pieces together, figuring out that Hoffman is actually Jigsaw, he's the one behind it. He's pulling up case files, he finds out that Seth, the person from the first opening sequence, was the one that killed his sister, and then he's involved in all the Jigsaw cases from there. And then we also even get flashbacks of like how Hoffman was recruited by Jigsaw. So with Seth's death, like the way he was killed being used as Jigsaw, Johnkramer wasn't happy about that. So once again, we've got tobinbell in the Saw movie as a flashback rather than part of the movie itself. He wasn't happy with how Hoffman is copying Jigsaw, so he ends up putting him in the chair with like the gun strapped to like his throat here. And so in order for him to survive, he wants to just explain to him the whole situation there. Johnkramer is like testing him, wants to know if he wants to survive, just going like through these back and forth. Johnkramer ends up pushing the shotgun, but it doesn't shoot, so I'm still not 100% sure in that situation, because they do see a shell casing in the gun, so I don't know if he got lucky or if Johnkramer purposely did that. But then we get this flashback of like these people from like the first couple of movies. Like there was this guy in the first movie, he was like trapped in this cage thingy here, so Johnkramer is teaching Hoffman about all of that and how like the sequences work and that kind of stuff. So you get flashbacks from like different parts of the movies when it comes to how Hoffman became an apprentice to Johnkramer. And then again, towards like the 3rd act, you get this little 3-way chase sequence. So you've got that FBI, like the Erickson person, he finds the victims in the escape room traps, and he finds Strom's phone in the actual room where these people managed to escape. So he's kind of connecting the dots, thinking Strom is Jigsaw. You have Strom and Hoffman going back and forth again, doing this little cat and mouse game towards you get to the final sequence where this room with like a big glass container there with a tape recorder, and Strom's listening to this tape recorder. Hoffman comes from behind. They end up having this little tussle back and forth. Strom ends up overpowering Hoffman, which I honestly think he did that on purpose, to end up pushing him inside this little jar container, where actually it was Hoffman's salvation, because we come to find out that Hoffman planned all of this. The jar ends up actually slowly moving back, and then the room that Strom is in ends up just closing in on itself, crushing Strom in the process. So Strom's basically dead. Hoffman manages to escape in this little container, and the Erickson character thinks that Strom is behind Jigsaw. So the movie itself, when it comes to like pacing wise, I just feel like the movie running at an hour and 30 minutes could have been slightly less, maybe 10 minutes shorter, because again, they spend a lot of time with just focusing on Hoffman and Strom and like this little cat and mouse game that they're going with, and just a lot of like unnecessary scenes. And again, having the flashbacks including johnkramer in there, because these last movie, this movie, after johnkramer's dead, you still find a way to bring him back just by introducing him into flashback sequences. Having all this of how he's being recruited, I just felt like it was the same formula with the Saw 4 movie, but with just like a bit of underwhelming here. I like the escape room aspect and like the different traps and stuff like that, but I just felt like you're not really rooting for these characters because of the decision making and because of like their personalities and stuff. So you're not really rooting for these characters. You're just waiting to see how they're gonna die. So overall, when it comes to the movie, I find it a lot more boring than the previous movies. Not as investing, not as interesting as it could have been. Especially with you've got like characters like Strom and Hoffman. You could have done more with them, especially even just like facing each other. That fight sequence could have lasted a lot longer. So it kind of just felt like an underwhelming, very bland, very boring movie that had potential but just executed it really poorly. So not a huge fan of this movie here, but again, with Strom escaping, this is going to lead on to like Saw 6 and what happens with Saw 6. So that concludes Saw 5. So let me know your thoughts about this in the comment section down below. Were you a fan of this movie? Do you enjoy that little cat and mouse game? What your thoughts are about the whole escape room traps and those characters there? Let me know in the comment section down below. But that about wraps it up for Saw 5. Thank you so much for listening and thank you so much for watching. Keep an eye out on the channel. We're going to be discussing Saw 6 in the next couple of days too, so definitely don't miss that out. But this is YK Reviews.